you're parting with large sums of money, sometimes the biggest transaction you've ever done in your life, you want to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable firm.
What is the first step in this transfer process, and what documents as a purchaser should I get ready?
So it's very important you're using a firm that has safety protocols in place in regards to cybercrime. You are going to be called upon to provide FICA documents to both attorney and the property practitioner.
How does Dykes Van Heerden assist in that process should these challenges arise? Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of Real Talk SA. We're very happy to have you.
And we're really happy to be here, Mia. Thanks for inviting us.
Always. We'd really love for you to just tell us who you are. Not us, I mean, I know you are, but the viewers and the listeners, just a little bit about yourself and your company.
So I'm a partner at Dykes Van Heerden Attorneys in KwaZulu-Natal. I started with the firm 13 years ago. Actually from Joburg. So they approached me there and asked if I wanted to take over a conveyancing practice in this jurisdiction. And that was 13 years ago. And we specialize in conveyancing. We've got 4 branches. We do all our own lodging. And we're very lucky enough to be on the bank's panels. So we attend to bond registrations as well. So that's a little bit about me, Mia.
I can't believe it's been 13 years.
13 years. Yeah, the time flies when you're having fun.
So that's the reason why I invited you to be here, because you've got the experience and the knowledge to help us with some of these questions that we'd like to answer for the public. Today we're talking specifically about someone who's a first-time buyer and the offer just got accepted on a property that they purchased. So I'm going to jump right in and want to ask you, what is the first step in this transfer process? And what documents as a purchaser should I get ready when I'm in this situation now?
Okay. So Mia, it's a very daunting process for any buyer, especially a first-time buyer. The first part of this journey is an offer to purchase. And I know you mentioned that the offer's already been accepted. In terms of the legislation, which is the Alienation of Land Act, that sale agreement needs to be reduced to writing and signed by both parties. So that's imperative. If you're working through a property practitioner, then they would generally assist you with putting together that paperwork. Or alternatively, if it's a private sale, you could contact a conveyancer like ourselves at Dykes Van Heerden, and we would assist you in putting that documentation together. So that's imperative and the most important step of this entire process. Without that, unfortunately, we don't have an agreement of sale for immovable property. So that would be the first step. As conveyancers and property practitioners, if you are utilizing one, we are both accountable institutions in terms of FICA. So in terms of that legislation, you are going to be called upon to provide FICA documents to both attorney and the property practitioner. I think we've all know now what FICA is. And it is that process of getting your documents together, like your identity documents, your proof of residence, a document that's issued by SARS, and then there's a whole host of other documents that might be required of you. If you're buying as a natural person or a juristic person, obviously those 2 sets of documents would differ. If you're a buyer, Mia, that requires a bond in order to purchase this property, you would then need to contact your originator that would be assisting you, or alternatively your banker, and they would require certain documents, financial documents, in order to get the mortgage origination process or that financial component process prepared and to start that. So that would definitely be a component a buyer would need to get the ball rolling on quite quickly.
So FICA is my favorite 4-letter word, but it is daunting. I think especially for the first time to get all those documents together. So I think just like you said, also to get it in advance, which brings me to our next topic to discuss, and that is, what can I do as a buyer to make the process easier?
Okay. So, Mia, there's a whole host of obligations in terms of that sale agreement that you've signed. And the cooperative you are in regards to getting those obligations met would make this transfer process a lot easier for all parties involved. So, for example, there's certain costs when buying a property. I'll take you through some of the costs because I think it's one of your questions later on. But one of when called upon by the conveyancer to pay your costs, and it's imperative that you get that done because it's also part of the rates process in obtaining that rates clearance certificate from the municipality. And if we, as conveyancers, we call on you to pay deposits, that would be another obligation that would need to be met, together with signing transfer documents. So I think in order to make it easier for yourself and to ensure that you're complying with an agreement, which is a contract between you and the seller, you need to ensure that you're meeting all your obligations within the timeframes that have been set out. Paying your costs on time and getting the document signed.
And I think it's also important for people to understand that if you don't, that you are in breach of that agreement and can be, held to that.
Of course.
I know there's a word called mora clause, which you can maybe, I don't know, it's not always enforced, but that's one of the things when you are in breach of the contract that they can hold you to.
Yeah, so delaying any, delaying the matter, that could be exercised against you, the mora interest, and then you could be liable for a certain amount of money. So definitely important that you meet the timeframes.
And how long does the process usually take? Say there is no, hold-ups. What is that process, the time frame on it normally?
Okay. So Mia, it's a question we get asked a lot as conveyancers, and we can never guarantee an exact time frame or an exact date that the transfer will take place. Quite often we say how long is a piece of string, but we usually use as our rule of thumb 6 to 8 weeks to transfer a property from one person to another. I think it really depends on various factors that need to be considered. One could be contractual obligations between the parties. So what I mean by contractual obligations is that a clause could have been included in the agreement that stipulates that the transfer can only take place as close to the 1st of February as possible. A family might want to remain in their holiday house for their last Christmas and they only want transfer to take place in 6 months, for example. So that could be a factor that would need to be considered. There could be contractual obligations that the purchase price is going to be paid over a period of time. Only once that purchase price is secured in our trust account would we then effect transfer. So that could delay matters. And I think, as I mentioned before, Mia, cooperation of the parties is very important. So how quickly are they paying their costs? How quickly are we able to get them to put pen to paper in terms of their transfer documents? Do we have any sellers or buyers overseas? That can delay things because they may need to attend an embassy or a consulate to get those documents signed. So cooperation of the parties is also vital. And then I think the third component, which is very, very important, because it's a part of our process and it's the one that causes the most delays, is that we rely on third parties like municipalities, like SARS. And unfortunately, that's not always in our control as to how quickly or swiftly they act on our applications. So that can also delay things. So looking at those three factors, we can determine, time frames, but generally as a rule of thumb, 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. I think also important for people to know, obviously it's the seller's right to choose the conveyancer, but to really choose that wisely and work with someone that's got experience and knowledge. So, we also want to talk about what type of challenges, which you've touched on, that could arise, but how does Dykes Van Heerden assist in that process should these challenges arise?
Okay. So I think when it comes to challenges, and as you said, the seller nominates the conveyancer, what's very important is that a conveyancer that is nominated is reputable. I think that's very important. And I think ways that a buyer could check that this is the case is phone the LPC, the Legal Practice Council. There's a number online that they could call and find out that those attorneys are registered and that there's no investigations or, cases pending against them. So you're parting with large sums of money, sometimes the biggest transaction you've ever done in your life. You want to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable firm. Mia, what's very rife in our industry at the moment, especially within conveyances, we are targeted, is cybercrime. So what's very important, other than making sure you've got a reputable firm of attorneys that are registered with the LPC, is making sure that they are very careful and they've got various protocols in place with dealing with cybercrime. Dykes Van Heerden has many security protocols in place. We are nominated beneficiaries with the financial institutions. So we, just like SARS and other bodies, we are loaded on the bank system. So you never put in an account number. You would go into your internet banking and you would find DVH as a beneficiary listed there. We also ensure that our clients do test payments of 100 Rand before they're parting with millions of Rands to ensure that they've got the correct bank account details and that no one has intercepted the communication between us and them. And I think what's important to understand is that even the property practitioners' information or telecommunications can be intercepted. So it's very important you're using a firm that has safety protocols in place in regards to cybercrime. We are targeted and it's becoming quite a big thing in our world.
I didn't know that you guys were bank listed beneficiary, which is so awesome. Because just we always say, phone and confirm the banking details. So that would be one less step that they'd have to do. And love the idea of a test payment, because I think, especially as a first time buyer, you have to put down a deposit, or maybe you buy in cash. It's a lot of money for people, and knowing that they've got that peace of mind that, that part is covered. The other question I wanted to also, talking about costs, what are the costs involved for the buyer when it comes to purchasing the property? I know you mentioned that you guys would do both, or can do both, the bond registration and the transfer. What would that mean in terms of cost for the buyer? Because cost is always a tricky. You're not just buying the property. There's other costs involved as well.
I think it's the biggest shock to a buyer when they receive a pro forma from a conveyancer, because it's not always discussed with them beforehand, and buying property is expensive. And quite often when they are negotiating the deal or putting down a deposit amount and then a bond amount, they don't realize that they're going to need liquid cash available for the costs. And as you mentioned, Mia, there can be two sets of costs involved. So you can have a transferring attorney, which transfers ownership from one person to the other. There's a set of costs with them. And then there's a bond registration attorney, and there's another set of costs that's directed at that process. So you'll get two pro formas if you are requiring a bond to be registered, which is quite normal for first-time buyers. So just understand that there are two sets of costs involved for the buyer. The transfer costs also include an amount that gets paid over to SARS, which is called transfer duty. So not only is it attorney fees for the services rendered, but a big portion of it goes over to the receiver of revenue. So that's also something that a buyer often doesn't budget for. So that's always very important to be mindful of. And then you get a deeds office fee. And as I said earlier, Dykes Van Heerden attends to both bond and transfer under one roof, which is great because you only need to meet with one set of attorneys then. And we found that the process is much quicker from beginning to end because we can manage that entire process under one roof with our various departments at DVH.
I think that's such a great benefit to your purchaser and seller that you can do both under one roof, which is awesome.
Hugely, it really is.
And if people wanted to get hold of you for more questions or any advice, what would be the best way for them to reach out?
Okay, so Mia, they can follow us on Instagram, so DVHKZN. What's quite nice is we put a lot of education on that platform. So it's quite nice to follow that if you are in the process of buying. You can reach out to us on Instagram. We're also on Facebook, DVHKZN. You'll find us there. We have a website, dvh.law. On Google, you'd be able to find it quite quickly and you can reach out to us there. Like I said, we're very accessible to our clients in KZN. We've got 4 branches, Pietermaritzburg, Durban North, Manzimtoti, Warner Beach, as well as Old Main Road in Kloof. So please come and visit us. Have a cup of coffee with us.
I heard the coffee is very good.
Yes, the coffee is excellent. We're very proud of our coffee. And come into any of our branches and chat with one of our attorneys. We'd love to meet with you and guide you along this journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely put that all those contact details in the comment box below. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And we hope to see you soon again on another episode.
Yes, love to be invited again. Thanks very much.
Thank you.